For millions of fans, he'll always be remembered as Sweet Daddy Williams on Good Times, the smooth-talking hustler with a larger-than-life presence. But behind the charisma and the laughter, Theodore Teddy Wilson's real story was far more complex and heartbreakingly short. In 1991, at just 47 years old, Teddy Wilson's sudden death sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Almost instantly, whispers, rumors, and unsettling theories began to swirl, clouding the truth of what really happened during his final days. Why did he die so young? What secrets came to light after his passing? And why, even decades later, are fans still left with unanswered questions about the man behind the iconic role? Stay with us, because the final chapter of Teddy Wilson's life is filled with mystery, tragedy, and revelations that will change the way you remember him forever. Theodore R. Wilson was not born into privilege. He came into the world on December 10, 1943, in New York City and grew up in Harlem, where survival meant learning to fight for every opportunity. From a young age, Teddy showed a spark that set him apart. He had a natural charisma, the kind that drew people in effortlessly. Neighbors recalled him performing in small community talent shows, captivating audiences with a charm that seemed far beyond his years. But life was never easy. Before stepping into the spotlight, Teddy held jobs he later preferred to keep hidden from the public eye, roles far from glamorous that reflected just how hard he worked to build a future. That determination followed him into the U.S. Army during the Vietnam era. Friends and colleagues often said it was in the service that Teddy developed the discipline that carried him through the highs and lows of Hollywood. Yet, those same years may have also sharpened the fiery temper that sometimes got him into trouble with producers and executives later in his career. By the 1970s, Teddy Wilson was ready for his breakthrough. His face began appearing on movie screens in the emerging wave of blaxploitation films that redefined black cinema. He earned roles in Cotton Comes to Harlem, 1970, Come Back, Charleston Blue, 1972, and Black Eye, 1974. These films, gritty and bold, gave him the chance to showcase his range and helped him carve a place in an industry that often sidelined black actors. But television would make him unforgettable. What many fans don't realize is that Teddy was actually turned down 3 times before he landed the role that would define his career, Sweet Daddy Williams on Good Times. Producers initially doubted he was the right fit, but Teddy's persistence and undeniable presence eventually won them over. Ironically, Sweet Daddy was meant to appear in just 1 episode. Yet Teddy infused the character with so much swagger, wit, and authenticity that audiences fell in love instantly. Viewers demanded more, and producers had no choice but to bring him back. Sweet Daddy became a recurring figure across multiple seasons, a testament to Teddy's talent and screen power. Behind the scenes, however, tensions simmered. Teddy quickly bonded with John Amos, who played James Evans on the show, and the 2 men became close friends off camera. But the same couldn't be said for his relationship with Jimmy Walker, the actor behind J.J. Evans. Teddy famously bristled at Walker's catchphrase, "Dynamite," believing it reduced black characters to caricature and made a mockery of African American culture. His refusal to stay silent about the issue sparked heated clashes with producers. On more than one occasion, filming was delayed for hours as arguments erupted on set. Teddy's conviction that comedy should never come at the cost of dignity set him apart from many of his peers, and also made him one of the most polarizing figures behind the cameras. And as those who worked with him would later reveal, that was only the beginning of the drama unfolding on the set of Good Times. According to one crew member who later spoke on condition of anonymity, there was a day during the filming of Good Times when production ground to a complete halt because Teddy Wilson refused to leave his dressing room. The reason? A script that had his character, Sweet Daddy Williams, using what Teddy called demeaning language. He flatly told the writers he would not shoot the scene unless the dialogue was changed. For hours, cast and crew waited as tensions built behind closed doors. Wilson, known for his unwavering stance on dignity and representation, would not budge. What happened next revealed just how far the network was willing to go to keep one of its stars on set. Or, some would argue, to buy his silence. The executive producer allegedly offered Teddy double his day rate if he agreed to perform the lines as written. Whether Wilson ultimately accepted the money or forced the changes has never been fully confirmed. But the standoff cemented his reputation as an actor who was not afraid to put principles before paychecks, even when the stakes were high. Yet that was not the most explosive story to emerge from his time on the series. In 1976, during the show's fourth season, tensions between Wilson and the production team escalated into one of the most notorious behind-the-scenes incidents in sitcom history. According to three individuals who claimed to have been present that day, a white producer suggested that Sweet Daddy should be played in a way that was more stereotypically ghetto. For Wilson, who had fought hard to bring nuance and authenticity to the character, it was a humiliating insult. The disagreement quickly turned into a shouting match, with tempers flaring on both sides. Then, in a moment that became legend on the set, Teddy allegedly reached into his bag and pulled out what looked like a handgun. Panic erupted. Security was immediately called, filming was suspended for the day, and for several tense hours it seemed certain Wilson would be fired. Later, some witnesses clarified that the weapon may have been a prop gun from another set. But by then, the damage had been done. The network executives knew they had a major crisis on their hands. In almost any other case, such an incident would have meant the end of an actor's contract. But Wilson had something too valuable to ignore: the loyalty of the audience. Sweet Daddy Williams had become a fan favorite, and the flood of letters that poured in from viewers was impossible to ignore. Executives ultimately chose to keep Wilson on the show, understanding that letting him go would risk alienating the very audience that made Good Times a success. Away from the cameras, however, Teddy Wilson's life looked very different from the volatile energy that sometimes surfaced on set. His personal life was anchored by his marriage to actress Joan Pringle, herself a respected performer known for her work on The White Shadow and General Hospital. The two had met years earlier while working in theater, before either had achieved fame on television. Their relationship grew out of a shared artistic passion and mutual respect, and unlike so many Hollywood unions, theirs endured. Married until Wilson's untimely death in 1991, their partnership was often described by friends as one of the most genuine and drama-free marriages in the industry. Together, they raised 3 children: Theodore Jr., Robert, and Nicole. Robert and Nicole were Joan's children from a previous relationship, but Teddy embraced them fully as his own. The family built a stable, private life, with Joan standing firmly by Wilson's side through both his health struggles and his battles within Hollywood. Colleagues often noted that while Teddy could be fiery and uncompromising in professional settings, Joan had a steadying influence. Their bond offered him the grounding he needed, a safe harbor in an industry where relationships were often fleeting and reputations fragile. One of the most remarkable aspects of Theodore "Teddy" Wilson's life was not his television fame, but the private steadiness of his marriage to actress Joan Pringle. While Hollywood in the 1970s and 1980s was notorious for short-lived relationships and scandal-filled breakups, Teddy and Joan quietly defied the stereotype. The real surprise, many later admitted, was how the couple managed to keep their bond strong despite spending long stretches working in different cities. Joan was busy filming The White Shadow, while Teddy juggled projects ranging from sitcoms to guest appearances on network dramas. The distance could have fractured other marriages, but instead it revealed a rare dedication. They made time for each other, maintained constant communication, and supported one another's artistic pursuits. Industry colleagues often remarked that their partnership was built on something Hollywood rarely showcased: mutual respect, patience, and unwavering loyalty. While other actors' private lives often provided fodder for tabloids, Teddy and Joan stayed clear of the spotlight. They focused instead on raising their children, strengthening their craft, and quietly earning admiration not just for their talents, but for the rare stability they brought to a volatile business. But behind Teddy's charm and charisma was a struggle that few fans ever knew. During much of his time on Good Times, Wilson was battling serious health issues. Friends revealed years later that he suffered from severe hypertension and had even experienced at least 2 minor strokes while filming the show. The thought is staggering. Teddy enduring mini-strokes only to show up the next day in costume, ready to deliver laughs as the flamboyant Sweet Daddy Williams. He told no one, fearing that if the network discovered the truth, he would be written out and replaced. He often arrived on set early to collect himself, quietly pushing through pain and fatigue so that audiences would never suspect the toll his body was taking. Yet while Teddy was fighting battles with his health, he was also fighting another: financial inequality. Despite appearing in one of the most popular sitcoms of the 1970s, Wilson was one of the lowest-paid recurring actors on Good Times. When he learned that white actors with similar screen time on other Norman Lear productions were earning nearly 3 times his salary, he confronted producers. Their response was blunt, dismissive. "You should be grateful for the opportunity." That answer didn't sit well with Wilson. Rather than backing down, he rallied several of the black actors on the show to demand equal pay. What followed was so tense that crew members later referred to it as the week of silence. Producers and performers spoke to each other only when absolutely necessary to get through filming. The dispute never reached a true resolution, and it is believed that the tensions contributed to Sweet Daddy's decreasing presence in later seasons. Wilson had made his point, but the cost was clear. Years later, an even bigger financial scandal would rock his world. Teddy discovered that syndication money, the lifeblood of long-running sitcom stars, was being distributed without his knowledge. Outraged, he filed a lawsuit that not only fought for his own rights, but helped reshape how residuals were handled in contracts for actors across the industry. And then, just as suddenly as he had risen, Teddy seemed to disappear. By the early 1980s, after Good Times wrapped, his screen presence faded. He made appearances in shows like The White Shadow and What's Happening, but then vanished almost entirely for nearly 2 years. Speculation quickly filled the vacuum. Some whispered that he'd suffered a nervous breakdown. Others claimed he had joined a religious cult. The cruelest rumor suggested that he was in prison. The truth, however, was far more complicated and far more heartbreaking. The truth of Teddy Wilson's disappearance from Hollywood was far more complicated and infinitely more heartbreaking than the rumors ever suggested. Years later, in a rare interview, his brother revealed what really happened. Teddy had not suffered a breakdown, nor had he joined a cult or gone to prison, as gossip claimed. Instead, he had quietly returned home to New York to care for the person who had given him everything, his mother. She was dying of cancer, and Teddy, unwilling to split his attention between his career and his family, made the selfless choice to put acting on hold. He drained his savings, disappeared from the spotlight, and dedicated himself completely to her during her final months. Those who knew him best say it was one of the purest expressions of his character: loyal, compassionate, and unafraid to sacrifice for the people he loved. But Hollywood is an unforgiving business with a short memory. By the time Teddy tried to come back, many of the doors that had once been wide open were now firmly closed. Casting directors had moved on, younger faces were being promoted, and Wilson found himself almost starting from scratch. Yet his determination was unshakable. He clawed his way back with guest spots on shows like The Golden Girls and The Red Fox Show, proving that even in small roles, his presence could light up the screen. His resilience paid off with a powerful performance in the Steve McQueen film, The Hunter. That role reminded Hollywood and audiences that Teddy Wilson was no mere sitcom side character. He was an actor of depth, intensity, and undeniable talent. Behind the scenes, he was even being considered for a groundbreaking lead role in a CBS drama series. Had it happened, he would have been one of the first black actors to lead a primetime network drama, years ahead of the progress that only slowly arrived in television. Though the project never materialized, the fact that Wilson was seriously in the running showed just how much weight his talent carried. He did manage to secure a role in Blood In, Blood Out, a gritty crime drama that showcased his dramatic range. But tragedy struck before he could fully capitalize on the opportunities waiting for him. On July 21, 1991, in Los Angeles, Teddy Wilson passed away from a stroke at just 47 years old. The entertainment world lost a pioneer far too soon, a man who had fought fiercely against stereotypical portrayals of black characters and worked tirelessly to push for more authentic representation on screen. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $750,000, a modest sum by Hollywood standards, especially for a man who had contributed so much to one of television's most iconic sitcoms. Today, it's a stark reminder of how little actors of his era earned before the fight for residuals, streaming rights, and fair contracts reshaped the industry. Even more bittersweet is the fact that, shortly before his passing, Teddy had finally secured funding for the project closest to his heart, a documentary about the Harlem Renaissance. It was a subject he had long dreamed of bringing to the screen, a love letter to the art, culture, and history that shaped him. He never lived to see it realized. The documentary was eventually completed by his son, Theodore Jr., as a tribute to his father's vision. Though he left the world too soon, Teddy Wilson's influence continues to reverberate. Modern actors like Sterling K. Brown and Brian Tyree Henry have cited him as an inspiration, praising the dignity and nuance he brought to roles that could have easily been reduced to caricature. Behind the scenes, his fight against stereotypical dialogue and unfair portrayals paved the way for a new generation of writers and performers. One showrunner even confessed that it was hearing about Wilson's behind-the-scenes battles that inspired them to pick up the pen and start writing in the first place. He may never have been the biggest name to emerge from Good Times, but his Sweet Daddy Williams remains unforgettable. With his flamboyant suits and slick talk, he stole scenes every time he appeared. And beyond the screen, Teddy Wilson's courage, determination, and integrity helped carve out a better space for black artists in television and film. Despite the controversies and lingering mysteries that surrounded both his life and his untimely death, Theodore Teddy Wilson's influence remains deeply woven into the fabric of comedy and entertainment. He was not simply another performer of his era. He was an innovator who dared to use laughter as both a weapon and a mirror, reflecting the realities of society back to his audience. In comedy clubs, Wilson's style stood out from the beginning. His rapid-fire delivery, razor-sharp wit, and fearless social commentary gave him a distinct voice in a field crowded with imitators. He thrived on pushing boundaries, speaking truths that others were afraid to utter, and in doing so, he carved out a space for comedians who viewed humor as more than entertainment. For them, and for those who came after, comedy was a vehicle for cultural critique and change, and Teddy Wilson was proof that such a path was possible. But Wilson's reach extended far beyond dimly lit comedy stages. On television and in film, he displayed a versatility that few of his contemporaries could match. He could shift effortlessly from playing comedic roles that left audiences in stitches to delivering dramatic performances laced with depth and humanity. His characters were never one-dimensional. He infused them with authenticity, ensuring that viewers not only laughed, but also felt. Beyond the laughter, Wilson was a trailblazer who used his platform to tackle subjects most would shy away from. He wasn't afraid to challenge stereotypes, to call out injustices, or to highlight the hypocrisy of the systems around him. This unapologetic approach made him both admired and criticized, but it also solidified his place as a comedian who refused to play it safe. His influence did not end with his generation. Comedians who came after him, from small club stand-ups to household names, have acknowledged the ways Wilson shaped their craft. His fearless approach to comedy, walking the fine line between humor and social critique, set a precedent that continues to inspire. Writers and performers alike point to him as a pioneer, someone who demonstrated that comedy could be both entertaining and revolutionary. Theodore "Teddy" Wilson's name endures in the annals of entertainment history, not just as an actor or a comedian, but as a force of authenticity and courage. His body of work continues to captivate audiences decades after his passing, and his fearless honesty in confronting societal issues left an indelible mark on the art of comedy itself. As time passes, Wilson's legacy grows clearer. He was more than a man of jokes and roles. He was a beacon of comedic brilliance who embodied the rare blend of entertainment and truth-telling. His life may have been cut short, but his authenticity and artistry continue to shine brightly, reminding us that the power of comedy lies not only in laughter, but also in the courage to speak what others dare not say. But what do you think? Was Teddy Wilson unfairly overlooked in his time, or does his legacy speak louder now than ever before? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed uncovering the final days and tragic fate of Theodore "Sweet Daddy" Wilson, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more stories about the legends who shaped television and comedy history. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.